Auzu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My good friend, Dr. Mithani, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Muhammad Hussain?
Alhamdulillah, thank you for asking. I know everyone's been very busy. It's hard to believe that we're about one day away from the beginning of the blessed month of Shahr Ramadan. So, inshallah, we all get a chance to, participate in this month. And once again, it's going to be a very different month, um, similar to what we faced last year during the pandemic, but obviously a little bit different as every year is. Some centers have reopened and we'll have limited capacities, but for us in Canada, our centers continue to remain closed during this time period. So once again, everyone is busy preparing for what we hope to be a very productive but spiritual month. And so, I wanted to, sit down with you, obviously virtually, and just have a quick conversation on some of the, questions that, our brothers and sisters, have requested some answers to. So I thought, with your background, obviously being a physician, and obviously participating in the month of Ramadan, you have once again a very unique perspective on things, and so we wanted to tap into that. So as we all know, with Ramadan, the focus is always on food, and we love to make sure that we have nice iftars to break our long fast with, and so that tends to be the focus for many during the month of Ramadan. But the impact that it has on the rest of our lives is significant, but can be a month of growth, if we tackle the month in the right way. And one of the things that gets impacted during this month is our routine. With us leading, with us eating a little bit later, in the day, waking up early for suhoor, and how we center and how we organize our own schedules and our routines, participating in nightly programs. So a lot of things get disrupted, and that does impact people and their ability to have a productive Ramadan, and one that's filled with growth and spirituality. And one of the things that I wanted to touch base with you on that doesn't get a lot of coverage in terms of what we think about in Ramadan, is the issue of sleep. There tends to be a lot of focus on doing lots of ibadah during the month, which is of course highly recommended, staying up late, and but the impact that it has is on our sleep. So I'm hoping, Dr. Mithani, you can just take a few minutes and just walk us through the importance of sleep, what it does for our body, and how we can manage it a little bit better, so that we are not having a month that's full of fatigue.
Yeah, okay. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Yes, you're right. Sleep is a very critical component of the holy month of Ramadan, and sometimes I feel personally that it's more important even than the food and the drink. It's not so much the food and the drink that gets me, it's the fragmentation of my sleep that really ends up affecting me in this holy month. So I think it's important to understand that for your body, sleep is a very essential component of your body. We have something called a circadian rhythm, is something that your body goes through. And it's the way we have been constructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where, the body at basically, within a day does need time to rest. Every part of the body needs time to rest. The brain needs time to rest. Everything in the body actually needs time to rest. And it's a critical component because that sleep has an impact on many different functions for the rest of the day, right? So having a good sleep is very, very important because it affects many different parts of a person's functioning, mood, behavior, energy, concentration, A lot of the higher functionings of the brain are related to sleep. The brain needs to rest in order for it to be able to function, optimally. And sleep has many different stages, right? There is, stage one, stage, there's 4 or 5 stages of sleep. There's something called REM sleep. And so I'm not going to get into that too much, but you need to basically have an opportunity to rest the brain so that you can actually function properly. And it even affects your worship and your ibadat and your concentration in your ibadat. Sometimes we just want to do some acts of worship ritualistically, right? So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this month is not going to look at the quantity of what you do. He's going to look at the quality of what you do, right? And the quality will come if your body is adequately rested, so that when you do engage in that act of worship, you're doing it, with concentration and, with your heart being engaged and your body is rested. So you actually worship in a way that Allah deserves to be worshipped. Otherwise, we kind of push ourselves and, some of us, will splash water on our faces to keep awake just so that we can complete that sipara of the Quran, because we have to complete it on this night. So it's really important to understand that sleep has a tremendous effect on our health. And what you need to do is to make sure that you are able to sleep in this month, like adjust yourself so that in the total day, you are still getting about 7 hours or so, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, depending on how old you are. So about 7 to 8 hours of sleep is something that you still want to try and aim for in this month.
So you obviously mentioned different levels or different stages of sleep and REM sleep and the different functions that each stage does and how we need to get into deep sleep for a lot of the rejuvenation activities to take place. Sometimes, because we have to, wake up super early and it's highly recommended to wake up for suhoor, we might not hit all of those stages. So, in order to recoup or recover from that, is your recommendation that we take naps during the day to make up the total 7 to 8 hours?
Yeah, so my suggestion is that for most of us, who have to go to work and have a job or something like that, it's important that you do maybe go to sleep. Let's say by midnight or 11:30, you've had your iftar, you've had something to eat, you've hydrated yourself and done all of those good things, and then you have to go to sleep. And if you actually sleep around 11:30 or something like that, and then wake up at about 4 o'clock or something, you've actually got a pretty good time of sleep that will allow you to go into those deeper stages of sleep and actually get a good rest. And then you have your suhoor and everything. And then if you can catch 2 or 3 hours of sleep after that before you go to work, that again will allow you to go into some of those deeper stages of sleep. But then what is really important, I think, is that you end up with, if you can, is during the day, especially in the afternoon, if you can squeeze in an hour or an hour and a half of a power nap, that is thought to be incredibly important in this time when your sleep is going to be fragmented. So my suggestion usually is for people that, later in the day, just before your program starts or something like that, you get that 1 hour of sleep if you can, when you come back from work, and don't just fall asleep on the sofa with the television on or the computer on or something like that. Actually go into your bedroom and go into your bed and fall asleep. And it's very important at this time to make sure that you have some good habits. So when you go, so number one, go into your bedroom. okay, and fall asleep in your bedroom. If you can lower the blinds and have a reasonably, dark area, as much as dark as you can get, so that your brain is rested, and that environment is conducive to inducing sleep. And then what you do is to make sure that when you do that, you don't take your cell phone with you, and have the cell phone on all the time, so that every time your WhatsApp message comes on, it dings, and that somebody's messaged you, and you have this thing in your brain that I gotta read that message. Who's texting me? Who's WhatsApping me? Who's posted something on Insta, whatever it is. I gotta see it. Take your phone and leave your phone away from the bedroom. Actually, there's no place for the telephone in your bedroom, and so don't make sure there's no distraction. The other thing that I also think is important is don't have a big alarm clock, big clock right in front of, like right next to your bed, because what will happen is you'll go to sleep at 5 o'clock and you won't immediately fall asleep because your body initially is not used to that power nap, right? So you'll keep looking at the clock, and the clock will be 5 o'clock, and then it'll say 5 past 5, and then you'll say, well, I'm still not asleep, and then 5:15, I'm still not asleep, and you'll start to make your brain busy because you're focusing on the time that's in front of you, right? So what you want is to not do that. Even if you think you're not going to sleep, you will fall asleep. And even if you don't fall asleep, just being in bed and resting and closing your eyes, that also has an impact, within yourself, with some of the things that sleep affects. So making sure you have good sleep hygiene becomes really important during this holy month. And between that time of iftar and you going to bed, and waking up for suhoor, and then taking another 2-3 hours after suhoor, after fajr, I mean, and then taking a power nap, in totality, you will end up with about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That really will rejuvenate you. It will energize you. It will allow your brain to rest, and it allows you to then concentrate and be able to focus and be able to then carry out those other acts of worship that are so important. Because if you don't get the right amount of sleep, and if you don't rest your brain, accordingly, then you'll get into trouble during the day, and it will affect your fasting. It will have a very significant effect on your fast. It will have an effect on your worship. It will have an effect on your salat. It will have an effect on your concentration. It will have an effect on a lot of things. So that, I think, is the kind of routine you want to get into. The routine is another important thing. You want to start to build some level of routine, at least for these 30 days. Exceptions being the nights of Qadr. Of course, the nights of Qadr are like an exception every night. Yes, you sometimes, stay up to watch a ball game or a soccer game, or, a sports event that's happening in another country, but because you're supporting that team, sometimes you stay away, right? Or and so that's an exception, right?
Of course.
And it's okay to make that exception for the nights of Qadr, but other than that, get into some sort of a routine where you're sleeping on a regular basis. Otherwise, you'll find that your fast will really become affected.
One of the things you mentioned in terms of fast, obviously, it affects, the next day in terms of our concentration and our ibadat, and, obviously affects our fast. But, one thing that you mentioned, earlier when you were explaining, the different impacts that sleep has, was the impact on our mood. Can you perhaps go into that in a little bit more detail, Dr. Mithani? Because, at the end of the day, a lot of us, especially in the afternoons, we get really irritable. A lot of people feel that is because we're hungry and we're hangry. But could that also be related to not getting enough sleep?
Yes. Yes, 100%. I can tell you that um, as you fast, maybe after the first 3, 4 fasts, your body will adjust to the hunger and the thirst. It actually does a pretty good job of adjusting. I mean, if you have certain chronic conditions like diabetes and other things, then other things come into play. But generally, your body will adjust. If you have lack of sleep, then it will definitely affect many, many things. So let me explain to you. It will affect you physically, right? Your blood pressure will go up. Yes. For people who have high blood pressure, your blood pressure will go up. Your heart rate may increase. You will also have what's called daytime drowsiness because you haven't gotten into a routine. And what will happen is it can also affect your driving, your focus. It can actually be dangerous for you, right? Because you may fall asleep at the wheel or something like that because you have had lack of sleep. But it definitely affects you psychologically and emotionally. Lack of sleep also physically, for example, it'll give you headaches. And sometimes we come home and we say, I have this really bad headache, and you just attribute it to the fact that you haven't eaten and you haven't had any food or water. But a lot of that is related to your sleep, and your body is basically telling you, you know what, you need to get into bed and you need to rest because I need to have some rest before I can continue. And you will see many people, right, even in the month of Ramadan, they have a headache, they go to sleep, they wake up, they're fresh, they feel much better, the headache's gone, right? It's not because they've had any water, because they're still fasting. It's because the headache's gone. It's because of the sleep. But it has an effect on you emotionally. It has an effect on you psychologically. So it will definitely make you a lot more irritable and a lot more moodier, right? Your fuse will become shorter, right? So small things that don't bother you normally, that you're maybe very reasonable at solving those issues, they will really bother you and they will irritate you. And now what is called higher executive functions, right? Your higher executive functions get affected. So your ability to solve problems, to reasonably, to rationalize things that you would normally do in your day-to-day life, they get affected. So a small thing that your wife will do will really, really irritate you, and you will lash out at her or lash out at your kids because of the fact that you haven't had a good sleep. And remember, fasting, even, if you look at the dua of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, for the coming of the holy month of Ramadan, where he talks about not just the physical fast, but he talks about the moral and ethical fast, right? And it is so important to have that moral and ethical fast where your behavior, your relationship, how you behave with other human beings and other creatures, how you carry yourself during this holy month of Ramadan is an essential and a higher level of fasting. So you may be just refraining from food and thirst, but you may not actually be fasting the kind of fast that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have wanted you to fast. And that may be because of the fact that you have a significant loss of sleep.
Now you mentioned
following your routine.
right, and so you mentioned headaches, as a result of that, which we both know many people experience, headaches in the month of Ramadan, and obviously it's important aspect when it comes to sleep to recover from that. But dehydration is also linked to headaches.
Yes.
So can you perhaps talk about the importance of ensuring that we stay hydrated, during that window where we have an opportunity to eat and drink?
Yeah, it's extremely important. So you're right. So dehydration is another reason why you get headaches. You can get trembling, you can get dizziness. extreme fatigue, and so on and so forth. It can be as a result of headaches as well. So the most important thing is to understand the basics, right? The basics is that when you break your fast, you have to hydrate yourself. Your body needs the water, right? If you're gonna drink a cup of tea, you wanna drink a glass of water with the cup of tea, because the tea contains caffeine and then it makes you lose water. So you want to have you want to make sure yourself that you're well hydrated. One of the reasons you'll see dietitians suggest that you should balance your iftar and suhoor with fruits and vegetables. One of the reasons for that is that the vegetables contain high content of water, right? And they keep the water in. So when you have vegetables, they may be releasing water throughout the day, right? So for example, at suhoor, I highly recommend that you have things that are not only going to make you full, but that will actually keep the water in, and that will be released slowly during the day. So oatmeal as an example, right? Or you can put some chia seeds with oatmeal. And I'm sure that some of your audience is thinking, ugh, how can I have oatmeal and chia seeds for suhoor? I want pakoras and samosas. The pakoras and samosas are gonna get you into trouble, right? They're gonna get you into trouble for the rest of the day. The oatmeal and chia seeds, or even fruits and vegetables will hold that water in, and some of the protein will also hold that water in, and will allow the water to be slowly released during the day, so that you can continue to remain well hydrated, right? And then and so those are the kind of things that you want to be aware of. And then in addition to that, there may be some people in your audience who are big into exercise, right? So the exercise program for the holy month of Ramadan has to change. Your body is not ready to really do some intense cardiovascular or cardio or aerobic exercises, because your muscles are not able to take that in an environment where they don't have enough hydration, right? And people think, well, if I exercise really hard and I'm fasting, now I'm going to lose weight. You will lose weight, but you lose protein, right? You lose muscle mass. You lose fat. You mostly lose muscle, right? So what you want to do is modify your exercise program so that you're not losing water during the exercise that you perform. So exercise, very important in fasting, but light, not intense cardio exercise, maybe a walk for half an hour or something. That's incredibly important and very healthy for you during the fasting, towards the end of the day, not in the middle of the day. But that will help you to contain the water.
So, but can you talk, Dr. Mithani, about the importance of water and what it does within our system, so that people know and understand, okay, water does this within my body, which is why it's so important that I hydrate?
Almost every function of your body requires water. So every muscle that you use requires water, right? Your breathing requires you to have water, because you are breathing in moisture and you're breathing out moisture, right? So every function requires water. And so if you don't have enough water, you will feel fatigued for two reasons. One is your muscles are tired, because in order for your muscles to contract and relax, they need water, as in order for them to get that energy to do that, right?
And that's why they cramp, right?
Yeah, that's why you get cramping, because the chemical reaction needs water, right? And so everything that you do will actually require water. But the other most important thing, and people don't think about this as much, every function of the brain, the activity of the brain, also requires water, right? So when you are not well hydrated, or if you are dehydrated, then you will feel your blood pressure will go down. Your blood pressure goes down, and because your blood pressure goes down, because you don't have enough water, then there is not enough blood going into your brain. So when there's not enough blood going into your brain, you'll get headache, you'll feel dizzy, you will not be able to concentrate, you will have blurred vision even. You will have all of those different symptoms where your body is not able to function because your brain now is not able to function. So you, again, still will become irritable. You'll become moody. You'll become emotional. And you will suffer because of the fact that you have, you have not taken enough and adequate hydration. So the worst thing you can do is not sleep properly and not look after your diet, so you're not hydrated well enough. And then you wonder, and that's when you say, you know what? The worst time of the month is Shahru Ramadan, right? People get so anxious about the month of Ramadan. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Honestly, I tell you, if you look after sleep, if you look after hydration, your Shahru Ramadan 80% is going to become easy. The water, the food and water, your body is really good at adjusting. It's not the main issue, right? It's how you are smart in making sure that if I'm going to refrain myself from water for 16 hours, 17 hours, what do I do with my diet to make sure that I actually don't get dehydrated during the day?
Yeah, no, those are some very important things, and inshallah, we've got some suggestions for our mu'mineen. We've got a little bit of a Ramadan well-being guide that we have put together for our mu'mineen. So we'll put a link in the description below. So please ensure mu'mineen that you visit that link, and so that you're able to download this guide, and inshallah you're getting some value out of this. So if you are, please ensure that you like and subscribe to our channel. And please, if you have any questions for Dr. Mithani, please put them in your comments, and inshallah, I will be more than happy to forward them to Dr. Mithani, and we can make sure that those questions are addressed. And you, Dr. Mithani, you talked some very important points about the sleep and the hydration being like a double whammy when it comes to fatigue and things like that. And we're always wary of our elders of our community, who do fast and then have issues of hydration, and have issues of sleep, and I know you didn't mention it, but I'm sure that those two also impact our immune functions, right?
Yeah.
And go ahead, Akram, go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to mention that in the time that we're living in right now in COVID, other than those important steps that we take, and certainly in our part of the world, we're now in the third wave. So the important steps that we take about social distancing and hand sanitization and masks and all of those things, one of the important steps we have to take is to make sure that at all times our immune system is functioning to the best of its capacity. And a lack of sleep and lack of water, dehydration, also affects your immune system, right? It actually dampens down your immune system, right? So if you don't have adequate hydration and you don't have adequate sleep, or you don't manage your sleep properly throughout the day, it will have an effect on your immune system, and it will make you prone to having more infections and be prone to actually getting COVID, because, your immune system is dampened down, right? So it's a very important thing to understand that all of these things are interrelated in your body, right? And nothing works in silos in your body. It's all interconnected. So it's very important that you do that. And of course, the other thing I have to, because your audience is probably going to be quite wide, across the world, I do want to put a plug in for the vaccines. Yeah, I really think it's important that you get your vaccine, right?
So even for the elders, AstraZeneca?
Well, for the elders, AstraZeneca, if the vaccine, no matter which vaccine is being offered to you in your country, that's the vaccine you should get. So remember, don't try and compare AstraZeneca with the other vaccines, right? So in the sense that people say, well, AstraZeneca, efficacy is 70%, Pfizer is 95%, I'll take Pfizer. Efficacy and effectiveness are two different things, right? Efficacy is something that you get from clinical trials. Pfizer clinical trials were done quite early, right? AstraZeneca clinical trials were done much later when some of the variants were already circulating. As Pfizer clinical trials were done in certain populations, AstraZeneca clinical trials were done in other populations. So just because one is 95% efficacy and the other is 70% efficacy doesn't mean that effectiveness is different, okay? One thing we know that all these vaccines have almost 100% effectiveness in preventing hospitalization and preventing death, right? So that's the most important. So whichever vaccine you are being offered in your country by your public health officials, you get that vaccine, right? And don't get worked up about AstraZeneca and Pfizer and Moderna and this and that. If you're, of course, now there are some concerns with the AstraZeneca vaccine, for people less than 55 years old around these blood clots. They are extremely rare, these blood clots, right? But there are some governments who have taken a precautionary kind of approach and not offering them to that population, but offering them to a population between 55 and 65 and whatever it is, and upwards of that. If they are offering you the vaccination, take the vaccination, right? You're gonna get into significant trouble if you get COVID, rather than getting protected with the vaccine. So please take the vaccine. And if you're fasting, take the vaccine, because
so it doesn't invalidate your fast, right?
It
correct?
will not invalidate your fast. And in fact, the direction that we have received from Agha's office in Najaf basically tells us that it is, his words are pretty strong. He's using almost wajib for you to take the vaccine in this kind of an environment. So don't worry that the vaccine is going to break my fast or anything like that. Take the vaccine, protect yourself. You are going to be in a much better place.
So that's definitely great advice, especially this month where I'm sure everybody wants to, do everything that they can to, complete the entire month of Ramadan and all of their fasts in good health. Because at the end of the day, that if you practice the things that we're being taught in Ramadan, we should be healthier, at the end of Ramadan. That is at the end of the day, the ultimate goal. But to ensure that people continue to manage their health, Dr. Mithani, I know you do get a lot of questions, especially from the elders of our community, who are on some maintenance medications, and what they should do. So in addition to taking their vaccine, how can they better manage their maintenance medication during this month of Ramadan?
That's a very good question. The most important thing is that if they are going to fast and they are on certain medications, they really must check with their physician, because their physician will likely alter the dose of their medication depending on what illness they have, and they will certainly change the timing of the medication. And the physician needs to know, right? And the physician needs to monitor that. So two things. One is, number one, the physician will either change your dose or even stop maybe a certain medication, or may actually change the time in which you take the medication, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing that your physician will do, depending on what illness you have, is they'll ask you to monitor your health as more rigorously than before. So if you're a diabetic, the physician may ask you to check your blood sugars a couple of times a day. And checking your blood sugar does not invalidate your fast. Or they may ask you to take your blood pressure a couple of times a day, so to make sure that your blood pressure is still in good control. So you want to be able to do that. What you shouldn't do is to try and figure it out yourself. Yeah, don't figure it out yourself. Believe me, there is a science to it. Right? The doctors are not just winging it. Okay, there is actually a science to this. Okay, and there are side effects and stuff like that that we have to take into account when we look at doses. So you can't say, well, Muhammad Hussein is taking a diabetic medication and his doctor has told him to do this and decrease the dose. I'm going to do the same. You may not be taking the same diabetic medication, or even if you are taking the same diabetic medication, your kidney function may be different to Muhammad Hussein's, or your liver function may be different, your electrolytes may be different. So the regimen may not be, it's not a cookie cutter approach, right? It's a very individualized approach. And you want to do it in a safe way so that your fasting is done in a safe way, because that's another thing that will affect your functioning, right? Just like we talked about sleep and dehydration, taking your medications erratically in a way that's not managed by a healthcare professional will likely get you into trouble, because if your electrolytes go out of whack, or if your kidney function goes out of whack, that will also affect you and your thinking and your mood and your behavior and your physical symptoms and all of that stuff.
No, that's definitely great advice, Dr. Mithani. And I know you work with the elders of our community very closely, in different communities around the world. So, I know as a son of a father who's getting old, we definitely do appreciate the valuable advice. But kids, my age, or I'm not a kid anymore, I'm definitely getting old now. But we often have these difficult discussions with our parents as to whether or not they should fast if they're on certain medication or not. So how do you, or what do you suggest or recommend when these discussions are happening? Everyone wants to fast, and it's in the month of Ramadan. You don't feel like, it feels like Ramadan if you don't fast, even though you don't have to because of your health conditions or the medications you're on. How do you suggest you go about having these conversations, and what should be I guess considered as a strategy?
Yeah. It's interesting, right? What you say, because in the holy month of Ramadan, if you are not supposed to fast, right, there is an incredible guilt that overcomes you, doesn't it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then our friends and family members don't make it any easier for us, do they? So, they'll look at you and they'll phone you and they'll say, oh, the first question is, are you fasting? Like, what kind of a question is that, right? In the holy month of Ramadan, are you fasting? It's not a question you should be asking anybody. You just have to assume that they are fasting. And then they pour on the guilt, right? That, oh, you are not fasting? Oh, but my diabetes is worse than yours. I have 3 other problems and I'm fasting, but you're not. So we get into this cultural thing. But let me just tell you the approach of this. And the best approach of this is from Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli. Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, he says something beautiful. He says, listen, the most important thing, and if you look at the sermon of the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for the beginning of the month of Ramadan, he mentions this, right? And he says the purpose of the holy month of Ramadan is to be in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to refrain from his disobedience, to refrain from sins. That's the purpose. So Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, he says something beautiful. He says that, look, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you not to fast, then who are you to go against his order, right? And then he says, take this as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a gift that Allah has given you in this holy month of Ramadan. And your test is not in fasting. Your test is in not fasting, right? So that's a gift from God. And if God is giving you that gift, why are you rejecting a gift from God? And Sayyidullah Jawadi Amali is saying, like, it is so amazing that how arrogant can a human being be to get a gift from God and then reject it and say that I'm going to fast anyway, right? So if you are one of these people that fall in this category, where you are unable to fast for whatever reason, medical, whatever reason, you are unable to fast, then take that as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do what is necessary, whether you end up repaying it later or whatever it is. But don't feel guilty about it, and understand that fasting is not just related to food and water. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to raise your morality, raise your ethics, and raise your spirituality to be able to reach those higher levels of fasting that are just as important or even more important than the physical fast.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Mithani. We've definitely taken a lot of your time. Is there any last minute messages that you want to convey to our audience that we perhaps did not cover in the first few minutes of our discussion?
Get vaccinated from COVID.
Sure.
Take
Perfect.
your vaccine. Whichever vaccine you get the vaccine. Do not procrastinate. Do not think that there is something better that's going to come. This thing is going to be with us for some time. Probably we are going to end up getting regular vaccinations from COVID. It certainly looks like it. Just like the influenza vaccine, I think we're probably going to end up at some point getting, regular vaccines from COVID. This virus is here to stay. It is affecting people physically, and it is affecting people mentally, right? One of the major things that we all look forward to in the holy month of Ramadan is how we're going to worship in congregation, how we are going to perform our amals in congregation, how we will meet at the mosque, how we will recite du'as together, how we will socialize and break our fast together. Where a lot of us are in lockdown, we can't do any of that. We need to change it, and we need to do our part to change it. So my message today is, get vaccinated. If you have a vaccine, get vaccinated.
I thought that I would have ended by now, Dr. Mithani, but you brought up the social side of things and how we want to congregate and meet each other. And one of the traditions now that we have recently started, especially with COVID and this pandemic, is going to our neighbors and those mu'mineen who live in our areas, and bringing them something for marking the beginning of Ramadan, whether it's some dates or what have you. Any issues or concerns with people making things and dropping it off for their neighbors in terms of COVID? Anything that they should be worried about? Any I guess thoughts on that for our mu'mineen?
No, I don't think there is any problems in that. I think you have to be smart about it. So if you're dropping things off, then certainly if you're dropping things off for elderly folks and so on and so forth, make sure that you've adequately masked and hand sanitized, and you're not going into their house and hugging them and Ramadan Mubarak and all of these things. You drop off in a respectful way and keep your distance. But one thing is important. A lot of these people are suffering. They are really suffering, right? Mentally, it is having a toll, especially on our seniors. So if you have the heart to go and drop off some dates, or whatever, for me, Muhammad Hussein, you can drop off pakoras and everything. I like that.
Only air fried.
Only air fried, only air fried. But when you come and drop things off, take a little bit of time and talk to them, right? Let them know how much you care about them. Let them know that you're always there for them. A 5-minute conversation, even if it is at the doorstep and it's socially distanced, and you're talking at the doorstep, or if it's outside, in the little, parking area that they have or something outside of their house, and you're having a conversation, it will go a long way for these people, right? It really is going to go a long way for these people. As far as sharing of food is concerned, as long as you are the one cooking the food at home and there is nobody in your house that has COVID, and you're reasonably safe, you're using safe methods of cooking food, sharing your food with your family and friends, there should be no issues with that.
Perfect. Well said, Dr. Mithani. And as we approach the month and the eve of the beginning of Ramadan, my duas are with you and your family. So thank you for taking the time. And to everyone who's watching, on behalf of all of them, I wanted to sincerely thank you, for taking the time and educating us and having some great reminders as we approach this beautiful month. So once again, we hope that our go ahead. Yeah.
The key to remember this holy month of Ramadan is vaccination. Vaccinate yourself physically, and then vaccinate yourself spiritually on the night of Qadr.
Inshallah.
Those are the two things you have to remember. Vaccinate your body and vaccinate your soul. That vaccination of your soul will allow you to attain taqwa, which is the purpose of fasting. Yes? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That's the purpose of fasting. So the key to remember is vaccination.
Perfect. A great way to end, Dr. Mithani. Once again, thank you. And, those of you who are watching, if you found any value in today's discussion, please ensure that you like. Once again, subscribe. And inshallah, you are all in our duas. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.